day. Won't you come out to play and sing Kidz Korner? Kidz Korner.
Hi, welcome back to Kidz Korner. I'm so happy you came back. My guest today, to my left, hi Richard.
Hi.
Richard P. Jackson. He has a website also, richardpjackson.com. I seen him many years ago at the Mary Jones show, Girls Night Out, I'm sorry. She had done radio at that time. I can't remember the radio station.
It was DRC.
It was DRC, and she did it with Brad Davis. And but I met you at the Girls Night Out, and we had a lovely dinner. It was in Manchester, and you were the guest, of course, and he does psychic reading he was doing at that moment, but you're more than just doing psychic reading. So maybe you can tell me, tell them.
Sure.
How that you do so many things.
And it's something that it's like a lot of things that happen for people is it's not always planned. I got involved in this work because as a general contractor, which I was in New Haven, a single dad, I moved into a house that needed something because it was right out of the movie set for The Shining. And it turns out that maybe the activity was there because I was, in fact, a true physical medium and a psychic. I didn't know it. So my daughter and I wound up having a little bit of a life change in a lesson. And in walks different people from the Warrens to Catholic priests to rabbis to anybody who can give me information. And there I started my career. First I started working with Ed and Lorraine. And it's brought me lots of...
Maybe you could tell them who they are.
Oh, okay. Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed has passed on, but they are the quintessential couple that are the Ghostbusters. And their work has been accepted in other countries by the church as authentic. And so I really learned with some masters. I thank the departed Bishop McKenna, who honored me by his friendship. And it brought me many other places where I would pick up skills to do the work, because the old saying, one thing leads to another.
Yeah.
So now I'm finding myself doing those skills, including spiritual work, with a lot of doctors, therapists, psychologists, because there is a spiritual component sometimes to family and individuals' problems. And therapists aren't equipped to know this.
So just to dial it back just a little bit, just so they get more inkling of where you come from. Thank you for giving the history of how you started. And I guess more is like, how did you know you have this? And what did you do with the Warrens? You said spirituals, but what did you actually do?
Well, when I contacted them, I was petrified of what was going on in my house. I went to some of their classes and immediately started going on cases. And they said, sometimes people, it can be said, pick up a camera and sometimes get something on film. Well, 4,000 pictures later, we realized that I can, in fact, get things on film. And they've been accepted worldwide by now, and actually for starters. And Ed said that's a sign of physical mediumship. And he pushed me in a good way. And he had me sometimes step out, whether it was on a case or on the way to a case, and he would say, Richard, tell us your feelings. And I would describe, I'm feeling a big building that used to be here. Did it burn down? And it turned out that most of the time I had something very specific and very correct. So Ed gave me that confidence. And when I left them after a few years and I went off on my own, it started getting calls from people who knew people, whether it was military bases, whether it was Smithsonian museums, whether it was battlefields in Gettysburg, families who were haunted, rangers sometimes. That's more or less what got me going. And then, the different needs for some of the families that I was helping. Because
how do you help them? You said you helped them. I mean, you got the ghosts on the spirits on the film, but how did you help Ed more and more? She actually just did a couple of movies. What was the name?
Big movies, The Conjuring.
Conjuring, yes.
And I think a couple others, Conjuring 1, Conjuring 2.
Yeah.
And that's actually a great question. I've seldom been asked that, by the way.
Wow.
And it's actually a perfect question.
Yes.
How I help people is I took a cue from Ed. He realized that I was both educated and street savvy. And I was good with people. And a lot of times a family needs to know how they need to stick together through this. That if it's a genuine haunting, and if it's a dark haunting, there's some that aren't always dark. It's just spirits who are making their presence known. But we're talking, they would get called usually for more of a case that had some substance to it that wasn't good. So the idea of the family needs to stay together. They cannot be divided during this. They also have to discount things that aren't necessarily part of what was going on, because you can create a situation where you almost ask for more trouble. I would explain to them when it's all over, and if we're fortunate enough to cleanse your house and have the spirits go where they need to go, which is not with you or with a family.
Yeah.
The idea is how to prevent it. How did it happen?
Yeah, how do you cleanse it, and how do you keep it from not coming back? Is it you said the family, does that mean there's a lot of arguing and fighting and not together?
Often.
And that's how they come in?
Yes, it's one, and even if there wasn't before, imagine a situation where you have a family and two of the daughters and mom are always getting it. The son is off in college and the dad's a truck driver. This is actually a specific case. And nothing would happen when dad came home. Nothing. So he would begin to tell his wife, honey, I know you believe something's happening. Meanwhile, she's been hit, bruised, scratched. She's watched her daughter get pushed across the room. She's watched cables slide across the room.
Wow.
Ashtrays fly. And she is
And
now,
you check this, and this is legit.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And usually I would either witness things, credibility with people are really important.
Research, yeah.
And I'll always look for the scientific reason first.
Right.
Realizing that sometimes people's own energy can do and create things, but in a sense, that doesn't make it any less spiritual or problematic either.
Wow.
So I approach things from a religious point of view, but also scientific, also psychological, and also as like the friendly neighbor who's been, on these kinds of things before, and people feel comfortable that that's why I did the work. And I was able to talk to them. It's sometimes an opportunity for a family to realize that whatever their spiritual beliefs are, a family that prays together stays together.
As they say.
Yeah.
So what do you do to cleanse the house?
It is usually a matter of ritualistic prayer. It most often done in a Judaic Christian kind of way, but I have used Native American methods. I've been honored by being a member of the Cherokee tribe years ago by some work I did. I believe I get help from the ancestors. We're all basically the same. We're only different here, not there.
Yeah.
And we get help from people. We get help from those beings who are on a divine mission. And I've learned that when you ask for help the right way, you get it so long as you're asking the right way. And it's kind of a teaching tool to humble us a little bit and to let us know that when we ask for things or start dealing with the forces of nature the wrong way, spells on people using a Ouija board, this sometimes, even with the best of intentions, can really lead to trouble.
So and it would create all this havoc in there. So you go in there with a priest every time, and you spread water, and
the first couple years.
Or do you feel the entity, the bad entity, and say go away? I mean,
I have had ribs broken. I've been thrown across the room.
Wow, that's what I was wondering.
Been levitated. Yeah. Now, some things, there's years before something like that happens, and that was happening when I was going purposely out on those cases. I was getting trained. But the nice thing was I became a priest. I became an interfaith priest in the Order of Melchizedek. So I worked often with Bishop McKenna, but I also worked often as the priest coming in and acting both as myself and on behalf of the bishop. And I would read everything from things from the Zohar and Mishnah, which are Hebrew. But usually it's a Christian family, and most often I would do the it's called the short form of exorcism in Latin.
In Latin.
In Latin, and I would.
Is that
and
more
there's
powerful?
a way to do it. It's powerful, and the incense and the making statements in each room as you work the way up, and it ends at the top floor. You don't begin at top. The idea is to get things out and consecrate the grounds. And no matter how many times that happens, I'm always amazed that this stuff is for real. No matter how often and how in my face I see it, I still say, this is for real, wow. Because if there's something bad, that's one thing. But sometimes what's bad simply needs help. It might be a spirit that's stuck. And I've learned that to not be so quick to judge until I'm sure. Sometimes it might be animals in pain. Sometimes it might be somebody in a family just trying to let everyone know, I don't know why you're in my house, because they're just not sure where they are. In which case, that's where I differ with a lot of people. I believe, and I know, there are spirits of animals and human beings who, for some reason, didn't make that immediate leap into that higher state of consciousness. Let's call it heaven for the time being.
Right.
So they need help, and they're not to be made a spectacle of. What if they were your folks, and maybe something delayed their going there, and they're just somewhere wondering where they are, a little
Follow
confused.
the light.
You want to help them into the light. You don't want to make them something that becomes a
You don't laugh at or this is
like
real.
a tourist trap, so to speak.
All right.
I'm very against that. I speak against that.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is, when I started dealing with multiple hundreds of cases, we started dealing with things like, our curse is real, occasionally. Our family curse is real, occasionally. Our familial curse is there. If people try to play with magic, does it sometimes backfire?
The
Yes.
Ouija board.
Ouija board. And sometimes, and this is, I think, where we hooked in a little about some of the problems with some families that really have had problems generation after generation.
Yes.
Incest and sexual abuse is perhaps one of the biggest single calling cards for something to happen. If other things are in play, you have somebody who knows, no matter how much they have healed and doing well with it, they also know God isn't always there the moment you need him, so they kind of become a good victim. And some of these entities are smarter than we think. And they target, oftentimes, things like people who have been targets of incest, necrophilia, ritual sacrifice, sexual abuse, and sometimes there's haunted places because of what happened. Sometimes it's years ago, and along comes a family that the daughter is a lot like the daughter of somebody, and everything gets triggered 100 years later. And sometimes there's haunted objects, and sometimes there's haunted people. And the idea is, oftentimes the greatest thing that I feel is when I can tell a family, you have some activity but it has nothing to do with evil or bad. Some of you or one of you have extra skills, and it's triggering things, you're seeing things, but heaven and, let's say heaven and whatever is below us, so to speak, and most religions have that,
Right.
that Hades kind of an area, or hellish area. It all isn't somewhere else. It's right in front of our nose.
Right on earth.
Yeah, it's just a different vibration. It's as close as our fingertips. And our job is to stay away from what we don't want and to invite what we do want.
So do you think that the more that's going on, the more you're asking the bad entities to come forward? And could there be one hanging in your house, or you got it at a tag sale and you brought that into your house? Well, now it's in you. And I guess asking a lot of questions all at once, but
Yeah, well, no, it's true. And there's different stages that, without going them through it, invitation, encroachment, oppression, possession. But those stages apply more to fallen angels, to be honest, or a cursory being. There's many other kinds of beings. There's elementals. There are things that are a little like angels, but not quite. They may be animal spirits or earth spirits or things that we call fairies. I have pictures of me with fairies talking to me that other people have taken. They seem to like me. And, you have to be open to everything. I always tell people, it's an aquarium. It's like a tropical reef. We don't know everything that's out there, but there's a lot of different kinds of friends. Most are good overwhelmingly, but we want to concern ourselves with things that either need help or things that we don't want around us.
Yeah.
And they're very seductive. They will take their time. They will often appear as a lost little boy or a cartoon character to a child, and sometimes it's several years go by before things start becoming what it really is.
Oh, so they're hiding, or they could pretend they're somebody they love that passed away.
Occasionally that too, yes. Yes.
When you clear the house, you probably would have to clear the people in it, right? Because things, and you said objects, so I mean, how do you get all that? And can you do it just in one time, or?
Oftentimes I will do it in one full day or swing. Usually it's a matter of 3-4 hours. I'll usually interview the family once, maybe see things another time. Sometimes I just try to make it, I want to be the cure. I don't want to perpetuate it by sitting there getting evidence for 30 days. I understand why people do that, but it comes to no good. What they're really doing is giving energy to the spirit. The reason that people do that, the investigators, are usually for a good reason, even if they don't know exactly why. In a sense, the reason they do it is way back when there weren't so many people doing it, there weren't many priests who had the kind of time and energy to see if this stuff was for real. So certain investigators, people who were either educated in it formally or by virtue of their lifestyle and their abilities, what would happen is now they have the evidence to go to a church or synagogue or mosque, to a religious leader, that something is happening, here's our evidence, we need your help. And I just made it, I cut out the middleman. I worked very much with Bishop McKenna, but I then worked as his proxy and on my own.
Do you think that, I have noticed that there's more of these people that go out there and try to hunt down these ghosts and get rid of them. I'm not sure that they know as much as you do when they're doing it. Do you think they're actually allowing more to come in, as you said earlier?
I know some people who
so
are doing
maybe
this.
There's more bad stuff going on in the world?
Their hearts are really into it, and they do some good work. Most, you're right. Some mean well, some they don't mean harm, but they're really out to have an experience, and they don't really get that they're having an experience and asking for one at the family's expense. This happened right outside of, for example, Dudleytown in Connecticut is one of the most haunted areas on earth. It truly is. And it's nothing that I wouldn't discriminately go there for any reason. But some of the houses and families on the outskirts feel the presence and feel the people sneaking in. It's now illegal to go there, and one shouldn't. And one lady had an occasional B&B. She invited a group in because she was having entities showing up, and quite frankly, they made it much worse. I don't know if that was their intent. I don't believe it was. But there's 15 people running around with cameras giving it energy. So I came in about 5 months later, and after 10 hours, I cleared both houses. And so far, knock on wood, she's doing fine 2 years later.
Oh, thank God. Do you think they have a tendency to go through kids, and can they hurt them, or you said you got hurt even just trying to get them away?
Yeah, sometimes I really believe we go through things to learn, and whatever we may get hurt or go through is worth it to understand this is not a joke, this is for real. You know, it's something that lets us know this is serious, it needs to be approached serious, it's not a game. It's not a hobby. It's not something to have a bunch of beers and go to a cemetery and make a lot of noise and take pictures. In fact, if somebody is getting high, whether it's legal or illegal, I'm not passing any judgment, but they're really making themselves very vulnerable.
Well, you only have, I'm sorry to interrupt, you have so much information, it's hard to get it into 25, 30 minutes.
Yeah, it is.
I know you wanted to talk about the work you did now, therapy and mixing therapy and psych together.
I'm so glad you're asking. Yeah, I had the occasion of meeting one therapist, and he happened to have spiritual problems because of all the people coming in. And we put two and two together. I cleared his house and him, and he was just amazed. He's a very credible, very well-known therapist. And as of 5 years ago, if he felt I could help a family, whether it's by virtue of doing some of the things I learned about teaching people how to self-clean themselves energetically and spiritually, how to truly pray in a way that they're going to be heard or they're going to feel a connection, or the fact that some people have problems that are in fact spiritual, but they don't always look it. It's not like there's a big card or light comes out, this is spiritual. And we found that between 1 in 3 and 1 in 5 people who have problems with them, their families, there's something spiritual in that context. And I'd say 1 out of 5, it's at least, the problem is at least as spiritual as it is psychological.
Well, you said like the sexual abuse and that starts it off too. So
Yes. And sometimes people obsess, they lose a loved one, and it becomes obsessive, and because all of a sudden now there's so many people out there doing this work, and they're talented at what they do, and I know when I do it, I know the relief it brings. But sometimes kids get the wrong message. This is an okay thing to do. It's okay to deal with the dark side, or it's okay to ask spirits to come through.
yeah, the Ouija board, they don't believe it does, and they think it's just a toy. They even have it in the toy department.
Yeah, and it's like saying, a razor blade is in the shaving department, but a razor blade could do a lot of damage. Anything could be used as a tool. The interesting thing is, to a lot of families and to a lot of people, it's something like they may need something that brings the family together, and it usually is genuinely spiritual. They may have moved into a house, and one of the rooms, for some reason, it seems to be dark. It seems to be they're not comfortable in it. And, for example, they may say, well, could this guy could he come in and tell us what it is? And I may say, yeah, it's because there's this underwater spring under it, or maybe something happened in that room, and we need to ask and visualize a lot of light and bring that lightness and goodness into that room, and usually it's problem solved. Most things happen as a way to let people know that we should be humble, and we should also be very proud that we're part of an incredible universe, and it doesn't just stop with us and what we see. We're just like a segment, and all the other segments of light, of beings, of life itself, of time, of distance, of space, is far greater than anything we thought.
Well,
it's a nice playground out there. It's never ending.
wow. Yeah, there's so much of bad stuff out there. I'm sure a lot is brewing out there.
And most is good. Here's a great example. I often do pet benefits as well.
Ah. So pets can be possessed too?
Well, it's not that they can be possessed, it's that they show up. Their idea of heaven is to be, if they can, with the people they love. So I have seen, for example, my German Shepherd, and I yelled at him. Well, it was actually her. I yelled at her, what are you doing? Get over here. You weren't supposed to be out. Come on, come on, come on. And all of a sudden I feel a nudge on my leg. And it was my German Shepherd. I was seeing Elmo, my Shepherd who passed away 8 years before, and we saw him plain as day. It was physically seeing him. It was absolutely it was mind-boggling, because for about 10 seconds, we just assumed, what's Eska doing out there? Well, it wasn't. It was Elmo. And it's kind of reassuring. Do our
It
animals
wasn't
really
scary.
stay around with us? How many people, despite their beliefs, have a cat that's with them 15 years, it passes, and all of a sudden they're grieving and they feel the cat hop on their lap?
Yeah.
That's
I felt
common.
mine hop on my bed.
And it's letting you know we still love you. So some people say, my little dog acts like my big Rottweiler. Is it a reincarnation? And I say, probably not. But what it is the little dog took a cue from the big dog, and it's like the big dog, that's dog is visible and is interactive in that little puppy's life. And so that little puppy will take on some of the characteristics of their big teacher. So we think, they're acting just like that dog. No, in fact, you have a dog in the flesh and you also have a dog in spirit.
Well, we have 1 minute, so announce how people can get more information about what you do.
Yes.
I'm sure we haven't covered everything that you do.
Oh, it's almost never ending. It's richardpjackson.com, and my phone number is in. I'm local. I will take any call. I will be soon having a new site called The Freaking Truth, and also hopefully a show called The Psychic and the Shrink. So if somebody wants to be on my email list, there's no obligation, there's no sharing of it, but they'll be in touch with what I do. And I'm happy to take a call to see if I can be of help to anybody who has problems in their family, their kids, or even something that's positive that they want to know more about.
Yeah. A loved one who's passed.
Loved one who's passed is probably the number one.
Well, thank you very much, Richard, very much for coming.
Oh, my
and,
pleasure.
You're coming back, I hear, with
Yes.
your therapist.
Yes, to actually talk about
what
what
you're
these
doing
things
now.
are in families that have us work together.
Yep.
And I don't work as a therapist. I work as a tool of the therapist.
Okay.
But
Well, you heard it from Richard, pjackson.com. And it was great having you. And thank you for coming and for Kidz Korner, and we'll tune in next week.
thank you, Christine, and thank you, everybody out there. I love this opportunity. I'm sure I'm going to meet some new friends. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.